Welcome to the 12th presentation in our series on action learning. We're very pleased that you are joining us. This presentation is about approaches to developing action learning programs. I'm Carter McNamara of Authenticity Consulting. We're providing this series to make action learning even more available and more accessible to everyone. This presentation is one in a series and they are best viewed in order, so please be sure to visit the website listed below for more information on the complete series as well as more information about our company. And so now, let's get started. If you've been following along with us in this series, then you know all about the action learning process and each of its key elements. Now you're ready to start thinking about how you might design action learning program for you. So let's talk about how can you best prepare for that effort, whether you're thinking about a single project or a multi-project program. We've learned some key guidelines from developing numerous programs over the years, and we'll share those. Before you go much deeper into doing a program, you should always keep in mind the success factors and the pitfalls to avoid, and we'll talk about those as well. Before you even get started with the details about your program, you should address some other considerations first. This is very important, so let's talk about this for a while. First, it's always best to use a team to develop a program. That way you always get a variety of perspectives in your effort. You also get sustained energy in the effort. But as important, it's an opportunity to ensure the ongoing interest, participation, and commitment of key people. For example, you'll need someone with expertise in action learning, which is fairly obvious, but you should involve the sponsor, the person who is officially responsible for the success of the program. It's very useful to involve some of the people who will be members of your action learning groups, because it's critical to get their perspectives on what you'll be doing. You have to make sure that your plans are understood and acceptable to them. If yours is a single project program, then it's critical to get the involvement of the client, that is, of the person who owns the problem that will be addressed. The client should remain in contact with members to help further clarify the problem, its background, support actions that members might want to take, and so on. It's very important that the team take a systematic approach to developing the program. By that I mean set clear goals, make sure that everything afterwards is focused on those goals. That's in contrast to doing various different parts of the program and then somehow hoping they'll all come together. The advice in this series is based on that systematic approach. There are various systems models that can be used. For example, ADDIE. That's a popular model. It's an acronym and it stands for doing an assessment, design, development, implementation, and then evaluation of your program. It'll also be important that the team write down their plans for the program, for example, into a program plan as it develops the program. The document's a great way to make sure that you're all understanding the same thing. It's also a great way to capture your learning as you run your program. Decide what kind of program you will have. It's usually easy when thinking about starting a program to think about, is it a single project or a multi-project? You've already got a clear idea of what you'll be doing, especially if you've been going through this series with us. The last suggestion is consider doing a short pilot or a short test of your plans. For example, write your program plan and then do one or most two groups and see them as a kind of a research effort to keep monitoring and learning what's going on. Then use the learning to finalize program plans for your larger program. We'll talk more about a pilot when that time comes during development of the programs in this series. If you'll be doing a single project program, then the team should really think about the following. Is action learning even really compatible to the culture of your organization? For example, some cultures see questions as being challenging or being disrespectful. You can still probably do action learning, but you'll need to modify it. And will it really be acceptable to management to have some people running around asking hard questions and then wanting to take actions? You might wonder why we haven't mentioned that concern before in this series. Well, before we were learning all about action learning. You don't need management permission to do that. Now, when developing a program, you do. In action learning, members will be persistent in getting their voices heard and in taking actions. If they're not heard and empowered, they'll become disillusioned and even cynical. So be sure that management will support what's going on in the organization. Also, does your organization have a history of success in even implementing new programs? Some organizations repeatedly start new initiatives, but rarely ever finish them. Action learning is the kind of program that once you start it, you really should implement it in some form, or members in the program will become very frustrated when they're told that they have to stop, and you might be better off never even starting. Also, will your organization support members attending meetings? For example, 2 to 3 hours, maybe once a month. Of course, as we've talked before, the amount of time in meetings really depends on the overall purpose of the program. And does your organization have a current real business challenge that the organization's even really willing to turn over to a group to address? Now that action learning has become so popular, some companies decide just to try it out by coming up with an imagined business problem or a problem that really isn't all that important anyway. The less important the challenge, the less learning, and probably the less commitment that members will have. Lastly, you'll want to think about who will fill the client role. That is, that's the person who owns the problem and will say whether it's been solved. You also might want to think about who the sponsor will be, and you'll remember that's the person who is officially responsible for the program. Sometimes that's somebody in training and development or human resources. If your program team is thinking about starting a multi-project program, then you're probably thinking about starting it as a development program or maybe an ongoing product or service. For example, it might be a leadership development program that is internal to an organization. By the way, remember, multi-project programs can be internal to an organization too. Or it might be a management development program that is offered by an educational institution. Regardless, there are many applications for multi-project programs, as we've talked about before in an earlier presentation. If it's a development program, then you'll want to involve other people who are part of the program. For example, if there would be various courses in addition to action learning, then you'll want to orient those trainers to what the process is about. You might also want to integrate action learning with other development methods in the program, even webinars or one-on-one coaching. If you're thinking about offering action learning as a new service to clients, then you'll want to approach that development almost like doing a business plan. For example, think about what markets there might be for the service, what you'll charge, how you'll promote it, and so on. And within the overall business plan, you'll still want to do a program plan that's specific to action learning. As you craft your program plan while going through the remainder of this series, please keep in mind certain factors of success for an overall program. If you've been following along with us in these presentations, then these factors won't be new to you. The first is that the program should have a clearly defined goal. We've had clients call us and say, we want to do action learning, and we'll say why, and they're not really sure. They just want to try it out. That's fine, but later on, how do they answer the question, what's success? A program should also have customized action learning to the outcomes or the culture of the people in the group. We've talked about how some people just don't like questions. You also make sure that you select members who can really influence those outcomes. People who have a buy-in to the process. You're absolutely going to need management support. If there's going to be a budget, there's going to be people who won't come along later and say, what are my members doing in these groups? Make sure your facilitators and your members are trained about what it is you even want to do. And you should be doing brief, practical evaluations to know, are you even on track? Those can be done, they don't have to be overwhelming, but that's what's going to tell you, are we even being successful? Now let's look at what should be incorporated into the actual learning process, not just the program. And again, if you've been following along with us, you'll recognize these factors because they're the elements of action learning we carefully reviewed. So, success factors for the process should include a real-world important project, not just something that you made up. Obviously, there should be strong attendance and strong participation of your members. Some programs have a ground rule that if somebody's missing, you just don't meet. And there has to be those powerful questions that we've been showing you all about and often calling coaching. Between meetings, again, the hallmark of action learning, they're doing something. They're doing something for progress, and then they're thinking, what are we learning from this? And there has to be equal commitment to learning and to taking actions. For all of that to happen in a high-quality way, you need good facilitation. Facilitation will be of the meeting and will also help the team to learn along the way. So we've talked about success in the programs and success in the process. Now let's look at some pitfalls to avoid. Make sure that your program has clear goals. When programs fail, it's that they're lacking clear goals, or they've got an unimportant priority or problem. They've got something and they're just faking it. Programs can fail if they lack management support. You don't need that to learn action learning, you need it to do it. Or it's lacking the members' commitment. And the way you'll know, it's two ways. They don't come to meetings, or if they do, they don't participate. Sometimes the American School of Action Learning focuses completely on learning and not on doing anything. So you got to do something to learn, and that's been the hallmark of action learning that we've talked about. There's other pitfalls. Let's look at those. An inconsistent meeting process. That happens if you've got a new facilitator. The facilitator keeps moving the agenda around. That just causes confusion, and it doesn't cause actions and learning. I think the worst is inconsistent time management. You might have a member who feels that he or she's in a deep emotional issue, so you want to give that person more time. No, they all deserve equal time for learning. Tolerated poor attendance. The first time somebody misses a meeting, call that person. They may be ill. They might not remember there's a meeting. Call them to let them know that you even care. Or you got members who are not going to take actions between meetings because they really just want to get together and chat about this stuff. I would rather personally in a program where they were doing actions first and learning later. Thank you for viewing this presentation. We hope you will go on to the next one. You might benefit from the following resources to add even more detail to our overviews of action learning. The website Action Learning Central references an extensive amount of free resources, including about the action learning process, each of its key elements, examples of action learning programs, and tools for each aspect of action learning. There's even an action learning glossary with definitions for each of the common terms in action learning. Our company, Authenticity Consulting, also is available to answer your questions or to help you in any other way. Our firm does very successful action learning groups around the world and for a wide variety of outcomes and applications. There's also the free management library at managementhelp.org. You can find resources and tools for almost any activity in the workplace, including for many of the activities in action learning. You can find more about each of these three resources by going to actionlearningcentral.com/gratis and select the presentation entitled General Resources for Action Learning. Thank you.